My name is Matsuro from the University of Tokyo, and I'm really delighted to be here in Hawaii. One of the reasons organizing this workshop is to understand the core components or features of joint fact-finding processes which Peter Adler and also Lal Saskan has been pioneering in the field in the United States. And by doing so, I'd like to get out or even promote the idea of joint fact-finding into the different kinds of problems, environmental problem or problem with radiation and all those kinds of things in Japan. And also people in Hawaii will probably benefit from the lessons from Peter as well as many other professionals who are participating in this workshop. And also anyone in the world will probably learn a lot from this workshop.
My name is Dong-Young Kim. I'm a professor at the KDI School of Public Policy and Management in South Korea. I'm teaching public policy dispute resolution and negotiation since 2006. And I learned how to negotiate, how to mediate those public policy disputes. And I got the chance to participate in this incredible meeting. And it's a good opportunity for me to learn from many experts in many countries about how they initiate, how they overcome the challenges during the process, how they accomplish the purpose of the joint fact finding. And so far, I heard a lot of interesting insight and questions regarding the very complicated issue related to joint fact finding. So my purpose in this meeting is to find insights from those expertise to apply those things in South Korea, where the context is very different from the United States and other countries, and for other developing country contexts, because it is very difficult to initiate any collaborative process first. And we're talking about how to do joint fact finding, but first issue is to how to create the incentive for collaborative process. But in many countries, in South Korea and other developing countries, it is very difficult to initiate those kind of process first, then put joint fact finding in that process embedded. Very challenging. I want to hear more from those experts in that issue.
All right. So I'm Todd Shank. I am with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Science Impact Collaborative and the Consensus Building Institute, both in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm here because, like everyone else, I'm interested in these questions of joint fact-finding. So you have a issue, a problem, a debate, and a set of actors that are using different sources of information, and it's helpful to have some shared knowledge, some shared foundation of data. And so the question is, how can we do that more effectively? How can we, face of multiple questions, multiple sources of knowledge, build some shared set of data? I'm particularly interested in questions of uncertainty. Professor Dong-Young Kim, I thought, made a really interesting point this morning. He said, joint fact-finding, facts imply things that have happened in the past, or they're happening now, and maybe it's not joint fact-finding when we're talking about things that are happening in the future. So in my work around climate change in particular, we don't know exactly what the future is going to look like, right? We're making forecasts, but that doesn't mean that the techniques of joint fact-finding still aren't relevant. In that case, the question is, how do we use multiple possible futures, not come to some conclusion around the data, but how do we use multiple possible futures, multiple models of the future, scenarios of the future currently, so again in the context of building some shared understanding of what those might be and what those might look like to make better decisions now.
My name is Jeff Melrose. I live in Hilo. I'm a land planner by profession and currently work in the county of Hawaii. My interest in being here really has to do with kind of a lifelong perception that we are not very good at civil discourse and that we have a lot to learn about how to be more civil in our conversations, and as our conversations become more complex, all the more important to learn how to be civil and responsive to good science and technology. So this gathering is a remarkable gathering of very sharp people who spend a fair amount of their lives dealing with challenges of complexity. The real issues that confront us are team sports, and they're things that have to be dealt with in a collaborative way. Getting that collaboration, securing that collaboration, getting a sense of commitment to the time and energy and attention that it takes to wrestle with some of these snarky problems, are tough, and they're situational, and they emerge around certain kinds of circumstances. And this body of people here today are very much involved with that, very practical, and have seen the challenges of it in every case, and trying to figure out how to build the community of practice so that we can become more effective at doing this. This is an important issue, and it's going to be more important as time goes forward. So
I'm Keith Madsen, and I'm a independent consultant that does urban planning and policy analysis. And I got attracted to joint fact-finding by taking a course from Peter Adler, one of the organizers. But while that was a negotiation course, what appealed to me most was this potential for joint fact-finding to kind of cut through some of the intractable issues in this community and other ones. It's just, I think, a very effective way under the right circumstances to get more rational thinking, more balanced thinking, more focused thinking, rather than just shouting at each other. The difficulty, I think, is not just in doing it right if it's the way you go, but choosing whether or not an issue is right to begin with for joint fact-finding. And that's what we're kind of getting into with this workshop. So the best thing about this session so far is that we got a range of people with different backgrounds and coming from different places, working on different topics, that are able to dig beneath the issue and look at the methodologies and see whether or not there are common threads for things that make themselves effective in joint fact-finding or not.
Hello, I'm Alejandra Camacho. I'm a professor of law at the University of California, Irvine, and also the faculty director for the Center for Land, Environment, and Natural Resources at UCI. I primarily teach and write in the areas of environmental and natural resources law, particularly focusing on collaborative and adaptive management process. I also write a fair amount and research a fair amount on climate change and the role that climate change may play in changing the way we think about natural resources. So I'm here to be a part of the joint fact-finding process because of a fair amount of the work that I've done on collaborative adaptive management and joint fact-finding in that context. And I find it incredibly fascinating to be looking into, in large part because it's very different than the classic litigation-based model of the law or the classic regulatory model of the law. I'm looking at sort of a different way to go about processes, trying to figure out answers to some of the major questions that the environmental agencies, environmental groups had to work through. So part of it is because my research interest falls within joint fact-finding and collaborative adaptive management. Another reason is because as the center director for the Center for Land, Environment, and Natural Resources, we're really looking at trying to think of ways of incorporating joint fact-finding and other collaborative processes in Southern California on environmental issues and land use issues. And I wanted to get a sense from what the experience in other parts of the world and in Hawaii about what's being done and how those sort of practices can be translated to Southern California as well. What sort of things we can learn in California that we haven't learned already. And my impressions of the joint fact-finding session, the workshop so far, it's still early going, but I found it incredibly interesting, really getting a sense of where my mind is percolating, trying to think through how is joint fact-finding different than other kinds of collaborative processes, what is necessary to make joint fact-finding work, and the circumstances for when joint fact-finding may not be a good process to use, that there might be circumstances when more adversarial approaches may make more sense because the parties are not really ready to try to do a more joint